start searching.
Okay, time to get started. Welcome everybody. I am super pumped to go over all the amazing footage I went through last night from Faire area. It was a lot. I certainly couldn't capture it all, but I think I did a decent job of at least getting the 3D printing centric stuff. And so what I'm going to do is, I figure, rather than cut together a fancy video the way that everybody else does with the audio and the effects and all the hip-hop music like the kids love these days, I think I just wanted to focus more on just my impressions of what I had seen, and we're just going to do it raw. So hopefully that works for everyone. Hopefully my audio is coming through okay. Hey, welcome everybody that's in the chat. So as I'm going through, I'm going to play some of my videos. I kind of cherry-picked three main things for tonight, and we'll see how far that gets us. And my hope is I can do maybe another one of these if this works well later on in the week, since we're on the off week for the catch-up. But let's see how it goes. Thank you, Matt. Audio is good. Glad to hear that. Let's see if the desktop audio comes through after all my testing and configuring yesterday, because we all know the joys of OBS. Thank you, Travis A. Pyro, telling me I look nice and crispy. I took a shower, just for everybody. Okay, so the first thing I want to talk about was this new printer design, and it's not exactly new. It's about a little over a year old, and Keith Kovla, aka Tinkers, on Twitter, clued me into this. I had never heard of a Cranestyle printer before. It was originated by a guy that goes by Who's a Wetses on Google Plus, actually, is where he kind of has his forum, and I'll put a link to that in the description after the stream. But let me show you what I'm talking about. Let's see if this works here. So this here is the Cranestyle Mini. It is, notice you have bubble T here for scale. It is indeed a rather mini printer. It's designed with portability and lightweightness in mind. What I found particularly interesting about it was the way that the extruder was mounted. And rather than tell you about that here, I'm going to play the video from Walter Shea. He's the guy that built this one, and this is his variant of the original done by Who's a Wetses, and he actually has two, and you'll see that in the video. So without further ado, let's take a look at that, and hopefully the audio comes through clean for that. Holler at me in the chat if it does not. All right, here's Walter.
Yes, so the Cranestyle Mini was invented by Who's a Wetses, and I saw it last year at the Maker Faire, and that's exactly what I wanted, so I ended up building one. It's basically designed to be a high-quality small printer, so using high-quality parts. It runs quite fast, and yeah, it's been working pretty well. I now have two of them, so this one just came up Thursday printed for the first time.
This was your latest one?
Yeah. And so it's basically the exact same layout as his, but I ended up changing the extruder and changing the design of some of the bands and the printed parts.
Okay.
This is a prototype one that uses some custom rails I got from Bill over there.
Okay.
And then this is the one using sort of the standard parts. which hopefully I'll get posted and get posted pretty soon.
So I'm going to pause it here a sec. So as you mentioned, it uses linear rail and a lot of high quality parts, and it's actually moving pretty fast. He's going to say in a second he uses rep firmware on this thing, and he'll also go into the details around the design a little bit more. I also asked him why is it called a Cranestyle, and I said, well, you know, that was technically done by Who's What's Is, but the assumption is because it's a cantilever design, not too dissimilar from something like the Ender, just in a much more compact package.
And it's just the benefit of the design is just speed and
the speed is nice. Yeah, it's compact, it's portable. Since I already have larger printers, it's nice to have a small printer when I print small things. I don't have to boot up the big one.
Wild design on the extruder there.
Yeah, so that was a design change I made. Basically, I wanted to cut the Bowden length, and this gets you a lot of the benefits of a Bowden design without a lot of the drawbacks. So the length is short enough that retraction generally is not much of an issue.
Have you run flex on it? Are you able to?
No, I don't know if I have. I use a similar length on my Eustathios, and it runs TPU fine.
Okay.
It is kind of slow with Ninja Flex.
Okay.
To be fair, everything's slow with Ninja Flex.
We actually aren't selling anything. We're just showing off some things you can print with 3D printing. And we're a group that sort of meets up, and we all build 3D printers.
Alright, that was part one. For some reason I had to clip that, or I did clip it into a inadvertently shutter down. Wrong folder. Part two. Sorry about that.
And so basically the idea is you have the extruder on kind of a gimbal to cut the vibration?
Yeah, so it's on it's actually a taper bearing with some magnets. So it's you can see it's a taper bearing.
Yeah.
Magnets, and this tilts. So finally found a use for that taper bearing that's been sitting around at home for a couple years.
It's really just a matter of using spare parts if it is the design. And then you just got heat sinked on the...
Yeah, I'm running these motors pretty hot at about 1.2 amps.
Okay. And
This was interesting too.
These are smaller. These are NEMA...
It's mostly NEMA 14s.
14s.
This is a sort of standard NEMA 17. Yeah, just get the
This
extra
is running
driving
in
force.
water,
This extruder is sort of a new extruder I made for these printers. It drives on both sides of the filament like a Bondtech, but it's basically done using really cheap standard parts.
What's the firmware?
Rep firmware running on a Duet Wi-Fi.
So on the, I'll post the link, but on the on Walter's page, he has details on how to do his version of the Bondtech, and that looked pretty interesting. So it's a geared extruder. It's grabbing from both sides, and it seems to do a pretty fantastic job for its compact package.
On Duet, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, nice. Looks cool, man. I like it.
Thank you.
So really, this is just your iteration of the one that you printed, that was developed by...
The original one, yeah, was by Who's It What's It. He's actually at the A-Press booth today.
Okay.
This was a first prototype using sort of parts that I happened to be able to get access to quickly. And then when the standard parts came in, I built this one, which is the ones that we'll be sharing because other people should build off that style.
And why are they calling it a crane platform? Just because of the cantilever? And
Yeah, you'd have to ask Who's It What's His for that one since he named it. But yeah, I think it's just a crane, just the cantilevered X-axis. He designed the original Bukito, which is I think is the first one of that style that I'm familiar with.
Yeah. Very cool. Well, thanks a lot. I appreciate it.
So I forgot to ask him what the build volume is on it, but you can see it's actually pretty compact. It's small, but man, that thing was cooking, and it was an interesting design. So what's cool about this, and the reason I wanted to feature it is one, Calvin. Hey Heather. Calvin and a couple of other people mentioned to me earlier when I put that poll up about which videos I should feature. You know, we should really kind of feature some of the more of the little guys, and this is a fantastic example of something that I probably would have just walked past and not noticed. Walter was in the Bay Area RepRap Group's booth, and there was a lot of really cool stuff in there. And I was glad that I got to spend a little bit of time just looking at some of the more creative stuff that you are probably more accustomed to see at something like a Murph. The presence of the tinkering crew is probably not as strong at a Bay Area Maker Faire. One in part due to the expense of having a booth, but those who get sponsorships or pull their resources like this, I think it works. I think it works pretty well. Oh, look at this! Developer Keith is in the chat. Welcome, Developer Keith. Banff was awesome. Look, we got a good crowd going here. Yes, I had a good time. For those of you who didn't see it, I did just kind of like a really quick catch up on day 1 and day 2. I did a preview, and this week I'm going to try to do a couple of these where I'm going to go over a few of my more interesting things that I saw and try to put my own unique spin on it, given that there's already so many other people doing fantastic videos on a lot of this stuff as it is. But yeah, Travis was with me, and they walked right by. But I did see some really cool stuff. I got some ideas for some projects I was working on, which is always a great part of going in and seeing what the RepRap groups are putting together. So lots of thanks to the Bay Area RepRap group and Walter for kind of walking me through a different style of printer that I'd never even heard of before. I guess what I would throw out to you guys is, printer builders. I know that a lot of you out there have built some. What I'm kind of curious about is what need does this style of printer fulfill? I guess it depends on who you are. It might have a good place in education if portability is key. If you're trying to demo stuff and want to move it around, it is a very nice compact package, and the quality of the components was really, really high. I suspect he could have had that thing running even faster. Developer Keith, did I get to see the Dremel laser cutter? I did not spend any time in the Dremel booth. I think for the reason I was saying too, like I was focused less on a lot of the commercial entities than some of the smaller things, which isn't fully true because I was really excited about Prusa MMU2 and some of the stuff Printerbot released as well. But no, I missed that, unfortunately. Eddie says smaller trinkets for Etsy. Yeah, possibly. I wonder too if having a smaller build platform like this, maybe the cost effectiveness of building multiples and having an array of printers over, say, having larger printers that maybe you could build, print a bunch of things, 10 up on. Let's see. Heather says she saw the Dremel cutter, and Pyro saw the Dremel cutter. Trav, did you get any video of that Dremel cutter, or did you just peek at it for 2 seconds? Looked like the Muse, he says. So a desktop. Travis is a little bit spoiled in the laser cutting department. Yes, cost effectiveness. It's a good point. A duet board, guessing, is certainly not a necessity based on the mechanics of what he had set up there. And there's an argument that it's probably not a necessity on a lot of printers, but the convenience of obviously the Wi-Fi and all that stuff is nice. And I got to imagine that the cost on those is going to come down over time. But touche, Eddie, on price. Better built for school environment. There was some commentary on his blog about the cable management and some of the stuff he did to try to make it a little bit more school friendly or whatnot. I'm always a little bit skeptical around the open designs, and a lot of the schools that I've interacted with in the past are hesitant. One, I think it's a kind of a marketing feel-good piece. They want to they really gravitate toward enclosed things more than open frame designs because of the questions around nanoparticles and whatnot. But I think there's a real argument to be made that high-quality, lower-cost printers and an array of them are more beneficial in an educational environment than, you know, the having only 2 or 3 Ultimakers, given how many students, you know, you want to give the opportunity to use something like that. So I always like to encourage trying to find a sweet spot of value and feature set if it allows you to have more printers. Granted, that creates more issues around support, but that's it. So the second thing I want to talk about, did they give a cost estimate on the Cranestyle printer? That's a good question, really quick, before I jump off. Matt asks, he is putting together the BOM for it as we speak. He is going to open source this design. This is actually slightly tweaked from, so he had built his own variant from the original Cranestyle Mini that was a little bit different, and this is his version 2 that he has built with some higher quality components, the linear rail and whatnot, and he had literally just finished it like the day before Maker Faire so that he could feature it here. So he hasn't had the chance to upload the bill of materials and the all the plans for it, but it will be open source and will be available to all, so you should have an idea of what the cost will be, and hopefully by the time some of the people watch this recording, if he's got links up to it, it'll be updated on his site. Let's see. All right, I want to move on to the next topic. So the next thing I wanted to talk about that I found interesting was some of the VR stuff. Now, if you've ever talked to me about VR, it's kind of been in the camp the way that Capricorn Tubes had been in my camp before, where I was kind of a skeptic around. Yeah, it's cool, it's neat, but is it really going to catch on? I'm a convert on Capricorn. I think I'm a convert on VR now as well, because it's honestly the first time that I really got hands-on, specifically with the Occulus, and thanks to Pyro for dragging me over and making me try it out, because it really is an amazing thing to experience if you haven't before. And it probably sounds stupid to a lot of you guys that I'd be a skeptic on VR, but given that they talk about it in the 80s, and technology wasn't quite there for it, and there's a lot of questions around, okay, well, what real value does it have? I can honestly say, Greg the Great coming in big with the $2 contribution. Thank you, Greg. Kisses to you, buddy. And I will give Travis a wedgie the next time I see him. Well, you know what? A wedgie's going to cost you $5. Sorry. Where was I? You're such a distraction, Greg. Application VR sculpting. I am not a 3D modeler. I know enough to get by when I need to, but organic modeling specifically, not my jam. You talk to like a Chaos Cortec or Luby or Carmelo Nazario, those guys have mad skills in 3D modeling, and I would venture to guess that if they got their hands on this setup, they would be rather impressed. So what I'm going to show you here is two things. I'm going to show you the Oculus, and then I'm going to show you another thing where my son was using the Vive, just to give you a sense. Let's see here. This is me plugged in on the Oculus using. Wait a minute, wrong video screen. Bear with me. Full screen. Oh, thanks, Eddie. Thanks. He really wants the purple haze. Eddie, you know what? I'm gonna find a way for you, buddy. Believe me, nobody wants it more than that. So this is me using the
That's pretty cool.
Oculus,
I've actually never seen anyone use the inflate tool to make.
So this is what you would typically do to do.
I mean, I've seen usually people doing demos. They'll do that by adding clay.
And I think I started it.
so I can walk in here.
That's pretty cool. I've actually never seen anyone.
Anyway, he's just talking about my modeling technique because I've never actually done this. But if you haven't been in an immersive VR experience before, you've got the 2 hand controls. The cool thing about the Oculus is the sensor package is pretty compact. Now, granted, you need to have a workhorse of a computer with a decent video card that can really, run this stuff. But the sensors are really just, these 2 guys here, and I was amazed by what you could get for such a small package. Let me go to the better video. Think better. All right. So
You go to the left. It's undo. So if you put something down you don't like, you can undo. Also,
this is the
on
screen
this hand, you see
right
that green
here
button?
Yes.
showing you
Double
kind of
tap
what
that
I'm
green
seeing,
button.
although once
So
you're
now
in
you're
it,
in
you
negative
realize,
mode.
like,
Okay.
So you can take away
two-dimensional
play.
representation.
You can like erase.
Yes.
So if you want to erase that ball in frame,
Chris,
you can do
is it
that.
Mac
Like that. Or you might
friendly?
want to bring it closer to you. So yeah.
I'm embarrassed to say
Yep.
I do not know the answer to that.
Yep.
I would have imagined,
You can
given
also,
the video card
You just grab it with one hand.
requirement, you would need to be on some heck of a
closer
Mac
to
rig
without
like
scaling
Mac
it.
Pro.
Because if you scale it,
And
then it might end up
I
being too
have
big.
not seen
And
anybody.
there you go. And if you want to go
Mac
back
for it,
to
I'm not
adding
saying
play,
it's
just
not
double tap
possible.
that green button again.
Right.
Put in the chat comment on that. Other than no one uses Mac, which isn't true. I'm running on a Mac right now, but I don't know for VR if that's the case. So just some thoughts on this. I am not a modeler. I am not a sculptor. I have never really done anything like that aside from playing with Play-Doh with my kids. But I will say the intuitiveness of this package is incredible. There's a lot of cool, tools, and anybody that's done ZBrush and all that stuff, like this is probably nothing new or nothing exciting. But the way that you can get like literally up in the model, they were doing some demo videos of some really incredible character generation for gaming, and just the details around like the tongue inside the mouth, and they're like literally like maneuvering into the mouth of the creature that they're creating so that they can do like the uvula and the veins on the tongue of the monster and all that kind of stuff. It was certainly enough to have Travis drooling for an Oculus. Yeah, everybody certainly would love I think to have one, but obviously at a $400 price point for the package alone, that's not including software, that's not including the hardware to run it, and then the graphics card you're going to want is probably going to be, I don't know, $750 to $1,000. I don't know if that's necessary, but I know it's pretty beefy requirements for that kind of thing. So I thought that was cool. The other neat thing I wanted to talk about, the package, the program that my son was using. Here's a quick look of my son. That's Biggs. He's 8. And he'd never done VR before, and here he's on the HTC Vive. And why does it keep opening in that window? Full screen. So, the thing that really impressed me about this I don't remember. Travis, tell me what the name of this package, this software is again. This is more of a
Does it
drawing
connect?
program.
Oh,
not
you
a
almost
sculpting
connected
program.
It's like you made a loop around yourself.
But the experience is the same, and it's immersive.
Nice.
And what really impressed me was the
That's pretty cool. It's like you're making yourself a little
intuitiveness
cage.
of the palette system. So
Put
your
yourself
left
in a
hand is your
Faraday
palette,
cage.
Your right hand is your paintbrush.
Yeah. Then you'll be
got a very
safe.
detailed orientation when he first was introduced to the thing. And I gotta say, for an 8-year-old to just pick it up like it's nothing. I mean, part of it is I think that's 8-year-olds in the world. They have no preconceived notion of what's hard or what's weird or what's different. This is all very, cool and intuitive. But well, I don't know if it's intuitive, but it sure seemed intuitive. Tilt brush is the name of the package, and the experience seemed some of the same. I jumped in it very briefly after he got out. The hand controllers are a little bit different, but the sensors are also pretty low profile. He had them a little bit more spread out. The green screen isn't actually for anything. The gentleman that put it up was saying that sometimes he likes to take pictures and put weird backgrounds and stuff. So it's really more of a showpiece. It doesn't have anything to do with the VR setup. But It was pretty cool. Chris has a very good question. Do VR tacos taste as good as the real deal? I doubt it. And heaven help us when they do, because we're going to have a real Ready Player One situation on our hands where everybody's going to be just inside the system for the entire rest of their lives. So VR, interesting. Like I said, I'm a convert. Best application I've seen for it so far, and granted, I haven't done any VR gaming and all that stuff. I'm sure there's plenty of entertainment and other uses for VR that people will say is nice, but I can really see how this is going to help elevate modeling for people. And like I said, this is probably not news to anybody that's a modeler, but it's finally good for me to catch up on some stuff. So it would be cool if they had an app connected to the green screen camera, let you put you in the scene with it. And maybe that was his intent. VR tacos are 0 calorie too, but they're also 0 taste, Chris. So pass on that. So the last thing I want to show you is a non-3D, non-maker really related. Well, it's not a non-maker related thing. This was one of the biggest makes I've ever seen, and I don't know how many of you guys heard of or got to see video of the Prosthesis, but I would be remiss if I didn't share this with you. My apologies for the video quality on it. My cameraman happened to be a 8-year-old boy who was sitting atop my shoulders at the time, so it gets a little bit wobbly and misaimed at some points. But I think you'll get the point. Just to give you a sense of what I'm talking about really quick, this is called the Prosthesis. It is a real-world mech, just like you would expect, and it was surprisingly non-computer powered, meaning that the driving of this thing was incredibly complex. The guy is sitting inside it, and you can't see him terribly well in this picture, but all the joints of every articulation of the thing are controlled by various maneuverings of his arms and legs, and it didn't even seem very intuitive. You know, my assumption would have been it would be more like if you lift your leg, it's lifting legs, and if you move your arm, it's moving, you know, the front arms, and it didn't quite work like that. So let me give you a shot of what this thing looked like, because it was pretty impressive to see running. So here it is really quick, getting prepared. This is the close-up of it, and an overview as everybody was getting ready. And here is the video I want you guys to see of the Prosthesis in action.
And you take a step with that leg. And as you get more proficient, you start to be able to string those together. So we'll see what we can do for you here today.
Please don't explode.
Yeah, let's hear it, ladies and gentlemen. Keep them going.
One of the funny things about this, I don't know if you noticed on the side of the truck, but it says Racing Mech. Literally, this is as fast as the thing goes. Also, as far as I'm aware, there's nobody else in this mech racing league as of yet. The other thing that I found quite disturbing was you'll see how precarious this thing maneuvers, and they said this is really the first time they've shown it to the public. There really didn't seem to be much concern for, you know, the fear of this thing running away or trampling people. I mean, this thing was massive, so you'll see it continue to maneuver, and you'll see
Breaking new land speed records right now, folks.
This is a racing. This is a racing. Get back!
Trying to see how he's maneuvering.
Come on, baby.
Inside the thing.
Come on now.
Yeah.
Touchdown. Woo! Yeah. Well, that was a run.
How expensive are they to build? They did not reveal the price point, but I know they are funded, and I think, I don't know if you can see the sponsors and stuff on there. I want to say these guys were out of Canada, Yeah, the only person who's safe is the one inside it. It could well be. They didn't mention the cost, and I didn't have a chance to ask, but it is a good question. I'll see if I can dig up details. I'm guessing there's a website somewhere that talks about it. But it was fun. Sadly, it did not have any missiles or any, things that we've come to know and love of our gaming mechs or, Pacific Rim style devices. But hey, maybe this is a start. I don't know. Maybe DARPA's got its eyes on it. One of the things I wanted to know was where it wasn't obvious to me where the power source was for this thing. There was no tether to it, so it's all electro-hydraulically actuated. And I got to imagine the power requirements for driving this thing are pretty huge. So my guess is the support behind the truck and the power they need to recharge this thing between shows was probably a big deal. But I didn't get to hear the details on that. So there's a little.
All right. Now the next trick, when we were building this thing, people kept asking us, because it's so wide, they're like, well, how's it going to turn around? Truth is, when you're dealing with a walking machine, the wider it is, the easier it turns. It's the long machines that are hard to turn. Or at least that's how it is in theory. So what I'm going to demonstrate to you is my current best efforts at being able to turn the spot. Technically, the machine could do a pivot on its axis. Let's see what we can do.
If you're here for the first show, you might have noticed we pushed the fences back.
You heard him say they moved the fences back.
Oh!
So those tusk-looking things are actually intentionally, to keep him from rolling over, because as much practice as this guy's had, he's like one of the co-developers, and I believe the only one really trained to drive it fully. So I don't think they're at a point where they're letting people drive this thing. Probably for liability's sake.
Yeah! Woo!
Yeah, let's hear it for our pilot.
I think that was a personal best, Sam. That's quite well we're ahead.
That's way better than the 8-minute turn you did last time, John.
Has got some better stuff, but what was interesting too about the design? Whoop, wrong one. Interesting about the design. The reason that they made it as wide. I don't know if you heard him say that. I don't remember if he said it in this one or it was a different clip, but it's as wide as it is because it's actually easier to turn this way. If they're really going to race it, though, I don't know that this is the optimal racing thing. Although it does make me think that maybe start it going and then having it just roll, might not be a bad strategy. Anyway, so I think I'm at just over a half hour, and I've got a bunch of other things I need to wrap up for tonight. So I'm going to cut it short here for tonight, but I'm going to try to do a couple of other things. So coming up the rest of the week, tomorrow for Hump Day wrap up. Yes, Matt, to answer your question, I'm going to try to do those intermittently between catch-ups as I have time. I'm going to talk about the new stuff by PrinterBot. Really cool. The Shoei Designs stuff I tweeted about earlier. How I didn't become more enamored with this earlier is beyond me, but attention gets drawn multiple directions. But the stuff that David Troy's putting out and releasing to his patrons on Patreon is just beyond incredible. If you're into cosplay or just want to try a new technique in 3D printing, it really opens up a new world of modeling. So we're going to talk about that a little bit more tomorrow. And I may possibly go into the MMU as well for the wrap-up if I am not going to decide to do another quick one on Thursday. But until then, I appreciate everybody showing up. Thank you so much for the contributions, guys. That's certainly not necessary, but definitely appreciated. I'm happy to give Travis wedgies for you, and I'm sure he's happy to receive them. And I look forward to sharing a little bit more of this stuff with you guys next week. So until then, everybody have a good night. Signing off.